Dinosaurs, the obsession of every child's imagination. Movies, the art of making imagination real. When you combine the two, you get... Now, I love Jurassic Park, and that's mainly because I grew up as a dinosaur kid. I wanted to be a paleontologist at one point until I realized that the dinosaurs are dead. They're not real, that these movies are fake. Give me a break, I was 5 years old. But these movies, at least the old ones, hold a very special place in my heart. And so with the release of Rebirth this weekend, or whenever you're watching this video, I wanted to talk about every single Jurassic Park / world movie, and we're gonna give them an obligatory, completely pointless ranking system so we can put it in the title so people can watch. Let's get into it. The original film of 1993 is an untouchable classic of its type. The amount of great and memorable moments, the acting and character writing, and of course a director at the height of his power combined with a composer equally as great. There is so many quotable lines.
At no expense.
And of course, no one can forget Jeff Goldblum. And that's truly what it takes to make a generational film that will be watched for decades to come. And I do believe we will be watching it in the future until we actually do make dinosaurs come back from the grave. This film perfectly captures the balance between awe and terror that these creatures bring and spark in most of us. You can watch this as a child and just be blown away by the sheer size and scale of it all, but still be an adult and argue with its themes and ideas and still be greatly entertained. This movie has one of the best openings and by far the best poster in the whole series. I mean, just look at the rest of these. These are just pathetic, especially we're gonna get to Dominion, but this is just horrible. I hate this with all my might. It's funny, it's scary, but most of all, it's heartwarming with a touch of otherworldly possibility. This is clearly, by a long shot, the best Jurassic Park / world movie. And I've never met any smooth-brained individual that thinks differently. Even though it is so old and so much has been said about it, it's very difficult to think about anything new and special. I do want to highlight one thing that I personally really enjoy that you might have noticed as well. It's a major part of the movie, and that is Alan Grant's journey as a father figure. He is someone who does not like children at the beginning of the movie. They're loud, they're clumsy, and they have zero patience.
Our attractions will drive kids out of their minds.
What are those?
Which is a big red flag for a grown man that digs in the dirt for bone rocks. But even though he has this very strong aversion to children and all their antics, he immediately helps and saves Lex and Tim. And not only that, he becomes a mentor and a teacher to them. Lex and Tim are the stand-ins for every single child that watches the movie, and they do a fantastic job at that. They are children. They're loud, dumb, and clumsy, but they also bring a sense of meaning and purpose. And so to have a father figure like Alan Grant in a film like this, being able to not just have a strong effect on the plot, be emotionally available for these kids, is something that modern films definitely don't do as often. And this is just one small part that I really enjoy about the original Jurassic Park, and I didn't even bring up the dinosaurs. I think what they established with the T-Rex and Velociraptors is part of the cultural understanding of dinosaurs. If we were ever to spontaneously appear in a place where there's T-Rexes, everyone would stand still, and everyone would understand that the Velociraptors are smarter than they look. And to think that back when I was a kid watching this on cassette, I can still enjoy it as an adult, shows just how universal this film is and why it deserves to be a classic for all time. This is obviously going in the #1 spot, and it's going to stay there. It also has the best laugh in all of cinema. Now, if you like Jurassic Park but you felt like it didn't have enough Jeff Goldblum, then Lost World is the film for you.
Mommy's very angry.
Coming out in 1997, this is a reminder that even in the 90s, pointless sequels were still being made and that it's nothing new. But before we get onto the hate train, I do want to highlight the charm and emotion that this film captures that many of the newer films just are unable to do. One of them being these two T-Rexes that play a major part in one of the action sequences. They're actual animatronics, and I think they're some of the best in the entire series when it comes to a visual look. And I'm glad that they spent the millions and millions of dollars to make these, even if they were a nightmare on set. CGI is an important discussion to have with these films because the older ones, the parts that are clearly not animatronics, it's so obvious that it's CGI. Like, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This is not good CGI, but since you know it's CGI, you kind of give it a pass. Whereas the newer films, they do include some animatronics. Since the CGI is so much better, it almost feels like it's tricking you, that it's trying to pull the rug from under you, and so it's less of a forgivable thing. The characters in this movie and in the third one, which we'll get to a little bit later, also speak to the ability to write semi-realistic characters, or at least semi-interesting characters. Something that I really love about the dialogue in this movie in particular is just how normal it feels. Like, it actually feels like these people are just stumbling into this situation, even though it's clearly impossible and this dialogue is specifically written for a specific goal. It almost seems like modern writers are incapable of writing characters that don't talk exactly like them. And this is one of the moments that stuck out to me.
Everybody, up! Come on, up! All right, guys, let's get the hell out of here.
Now, that might just be a really stupid little part of the movie, but I really enjoyed it because it just showed the quiet humanity that this film is able to bring out. It's a pausing moment. It doesn't play a crucial part to the story, but it just adds so much depth to these two characters. And that goes further into, I think, three of some of the most unique characters in any of these films. First, with Sarah Harding. She's your typical environmentalist, crazy person that in reality I think most people wish would die somewhere in the beginning of the movie, so we don't have to hear them say "I told you so" every 5 minutes. Her character here is expanded upon in an interesting way because she's not just an environmentalist, she's also interested in proving her colleagues wrong. She's trying to further her career here while still being passionate about dinosaurs, which is interesting. They put a personal motivation into something that usually is someone who's morally perfect. And the same thing goes for the photographer Owen, who also does and takes cases of photography that are often full of human or animal suffering. But he took this job because he wants money and he wants recognition. And that humanizes these two characters who are typically just your "I told you so" characters. But by far my favorite one is Roland. He's the military bad guy with a gun who usually ends up getting eaten by a dinosaur by the end of the film. But here they humanize him in a way that's super cool and I think really noble. He wants to shoot a T-Rex, and his reasoning is that it's the strongest creature in the world and he wants to claim to that fame. And there is something very respectable about wanting to capture this kind of creature, and they give him all these cool one-liners.
I believe I've spent enough time in the company of death.
And interesting character development. He's also very smart. He's not just some idiot out there in the field. He knows his thing, and he ultimately doesn't stop killing things because he learns the value of life. It's because his friend died. And that was partially why he did all this. And so he doesn't want to be in the company of death anymore because he's moved on. And that's what he does. He just leaves in the second act. He just skedaddles away. This is a nuance that I feel like a lot of the later films completely gloss over. The other two major positives about this film are the kills in it. Some of these kills are really creative and interesting, and I love the camera work with it, especially the point of view shots that they do fairly often, where the camera just rushes at the person, and also the fact of how funny this movie is. And I think it's most likely accidentally funny, and so I'm kind of giving it a positive that it probably doesn't deserve. But watching this, I was laughing so much, even though I was watching it completely alone. And I think partially that falls on to Jeff Goldblum as an actor and as a person. He's very memeable. It tries to do so many things that the first movie did, but it doesn't understand why it did them. Dr. Malcolm and his relationship with Harding and his daughter are very boring, and they're never explored throughout the film, but they spend a good chunk of the first act explaining the relationship, which just becomes really bloated. This movie also has two separate endings. It has an ending where they leave the island and when they finally recapture the T-Rex. Though I will say the T-Rex in San Diego is the best sequence in any of these movies when it comes to dinosaurs being in a modern setting. It's incredibly funny. It's incredibly interesting to think, how would you respond if there was a T-Rex drinking from your pool? And the velociraptors in this movie are by far some of the worst portrayals of them in the world. They are Looney Tunes stupid in this one. So overall, I will say that while Lost World has a lot of charm to it, a lot of interesting moments, great uses of practical effects, it ultimately falls flat on an emotional level and a thematic level. Well, it can't go anywhere else right now, but I'm going to rank it at number 2. Let's see if it stays there. Jurassic Park 3, coming out in 2001, is the only one without a cool title. But it's also the first Jurassic Park movie that my parents owned on DVD. And so I watched it a lot because I was too lazy to rewind the cassette tapes on the older ones. I personally have a weird connection with this film. There are certain parts that as a child I couldn't let go of. Like the kid Eric somehow got T-Rex pee. To this day, I'm like, how did he do that? How did he do that? This film also has my favorite dinosaur, the Spinosaurus, in all its glory. In the 3rd grade, I used this movie as a cited source on why the Spinosaurus is cooler than the T-Rex for some class essay we had to do. And the teacher had to remind me that this movie is fake and that you can't cite it as a factual source in your paper. I didn't care. The Spinosaurus is cool as hell. I also like the fact that this movie was able to bring a new villain dinosaur that isn't just genetic abomination like the new sequels do, where they make completely brand new dinosaurs that don't exist. And I also love the portrayal of the velociraptors here. They are actually really intelligent. No other film is ever able to touch. Their intelligence peaks in this movie. We see what these creatures would act like if they weren't just trying to break out of captivity. They are group and family oriented. They have a hierarchy of positions, and they also have wants and needs that they try to communicate with each other, which is a completely new way of viewing them. They're almost like very smart human-like reptiles. And I love that the way that they were ultimately defeated has nothing to do with shooting them or running away or them falling on something. Their intellect is used against them. And is something that is never explored ever again. The pterodon sequence in the cage is also just an amazing part about this movie. But beyond the dinosaurs, the best part about this film by far is that it actually expands on some of the ideas of the first film. Billy is someone who genuinely loves dinosaurs when it comes to the way that Alan Grant sees them. He doesn't mind digging into the dirt, and he has that level of patience, love, and understanding. But he's also a young man who wants to see and do new things. So when he steals the raptor eggs, you kind of expect him to just be one of those evil, money-hungry people we see in all of these films.
But wait! There's more!
But later on we see that he has good intentions and that he's a good person with good morals, even if he doesn't fully understand the consequences of his actions. And this scene with Alan and Eric on the boat explaining that there are two types of people, astronomers and astronauts, explores that there is a middle gray area between wanting these dinosaurs to be completely separate from humanity and wanting them for money reasons. That might sound very small, it might sound very little, but it does actually explore the themes in a unique way. Maybe there is a way to use these dinosaurs that isn't just for evil money. Maybe they can bring some kind of good to the world for every single human being. And the last positive thing I do have to say about this film is that it's very short, which isn't always an inherently good thing. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It's only an hour and a half, the shortest one out of all of them. And so what are these bad things that happen in this film? Well, first of all, just like the last one, it is really goofy.
Alan!
And it has some of the worst CGI effects, even for 2001. This green screen is worse than mine. And this lady takes the #1 spot for the most annoying character in the original trilogy. Sam Neill gives a great performance here, but his character pretty much has no motivation. He gets tricked into doing something he doesn't want to, and he spends the whole time just trying to get back to what he was doing before. He was happy before, he just needed some money. And so he has a very flat arc. And so the emotional weight is completely carried by Eric, who doesn't appear until, I think, after the halfway point. It might be more than the halfway point. And his two divorced parents, one of which is a Karen.
Dr. Grant said that's a bad idea! What?
And the other one is a father that deserves better. Overall, this film does have some interesting ideas when it comes to the dinosaurs and its further exploration of some of the themes of the original. It is still very goofy. The structure is not the best one, and the motivation for most of our characters are either non-existent or are completely relied on side characters that get pretty much no screen time. But I do love this scene with the radio.
He's just standing there, menacingly!
Pure cinema. I'm going to put this at number 2, just above Lost World, but honestly, you could have these interchangeably. So now we jump to the future with Jurassic World, which is separate.